Good morning from Ormond Beach, Florida, in the studio here. The sun is rising in Pitcairn Island in the South Pacific, which you may know from Mutiny on the Bounty, whether it's the Clark Gable version or the later Marlon Brando version. Very good movie, interesting story about a mutiny, British sailors. I think it was like the late 1700s or the 1800s sometime. Basically, they rebelled and they knew they'd be prosecuted back in England, so they said, you know what, hell with this. There's this uninhabited island that no one's ever made it to, but we might as well try because we'll be hung otherwise. Grabbed some Polynesian girls and created a new civilization there. Very precariously, but it worked out. There are still people there today in Pitcairn Island in the South Pacific, and the sun is just rising right now. I apologize for being late. Look, the sun would have risen around 6:30 here. I think I only got to bed at 5 a.m. Not that I was out late partying or something, but you know, it would have been a good night for a lot of us Jewish people to listen to live music. I'm not going to get into that, but we just had a period in which there were some restrictions, including not shaving. You may notice I look a little different. And but the reality is I just couldn't fall asleep because I had a long nap after a very good night of sleep on Friday night and Saturday, probably helped by some scotch, but scotch and a very comfortable mattress where I was in Ponte Vedra Beach, mattress top, whatever, but I slept great and didn't feel the need to fall asleep. So I mentioned the precarious society of Pitcairn Island, which at least started out that way. Now there seems to be a less likely, certainly as of the 1700s, 1800s, civilization to be in a precarious state, but so be it. Merkel's Germany. We're going to talk about that. We have an article, basically, as I often do, I give credit, but I basically steal this information from something on the internet and try to bring it to you. This is courtesy of Josh D. Kaplan, who fills in. He runs something called Vessel News, which got a lot of hits a few weeks ago with the Facebook killer. They happened to organize the article very well, especially with the thumbnail photo. It's a big growing site, a great alternative to the regular media. I probably have to look at it in more detail, but Josh seems like he has his act together. I have interacted with him a little bit just this morning, just a few minutes ago. And he covers for Gateway Pundit on the weekend. And it seems like a solid guy who is a good alternative to the garbage you get from the more elite media. So let's talk about what's going on in Germany. Ironic also because today, you know, you wonder, are the Germans, are there any holidays in which they have any celebration of being Germans? Today, for, you know, I think you know the relationship between Jews and Germany over the last 80 years. I don't need to explain that. But there is a sense of irony, of course, in the sense that, I mean, at this point, which language seems likely to be more likely to be spoken in 50 or 100 years? Hebrew or German, or for that matter Yiddish, which is based on German, bastardization of German, or German, because at the rate Germany's going, not much of a future there. They are, I don't know, it makes me think of Genesis chapter 12 verse 3 about what will happen to people who really mistreat the Jews, though ironically, not ironically, but one would think it would be God bringing down the punishment on a country for something like the Holocaust, but it seems to be the Germans just bringing it on themselves. Who knows? Maybe God is tipping Merkel's hand. Not that I wish for this kind of thing. Look, anyone who's really guilty of anything back then is what? How old now at this point? If you were doing something bad at the age of 15 in 1945, and that's really the bare minimum, you would be at least 87 years old. So I don't know why the younger people are being punished for the sins of their forefathers. And of course, what? 1/3 of the people voted for Hitler in 1932, and that was less than, I think, in 1928, if I have my history correct. So let's look at this article and see what the Germans are bringing down on themselves. And it's not like Merkel is running the place as a dictatorship either. Yes, there's a lot of fascist tendencies there. There's a lot of authoritarian tendencies if you go against the EU, but it's not like it was 80, 85 years ago. It seems like this is what the people want, which is in certainly larger numbers than any support Hitler ever got, and the National Socialists, as I like to call them. So let's get to this article by Joshua Kaplan, who you can follow at Josh D. Kaplan, C-A-P-L-A-N. I suggest you follow him on Twitter. Here's what he wrote, and it's basically from an article from the Gatestone Institute. We all knew this day would come. We just didn't know how soon. And again, it's called Germany. Maybe I didn't mention it before. Germany is now confiscating homes to use. Germany is now confiscating homes to use for Merkel's migrants. Actually, before I get into that, something I pointed out last week, Germany, and as soon as Has France's new president taken office, Macron? Neither Germany nor France has a leader with any children. I'm not one to talk, but I'm not leading a country. And Germany, you know, there's ironically, it's Mother's Day today, not in Germany, but here. And Merkel, who is the mother to none herself, likes to see herself as a sort of mother to these poor Muslim refugees. So here is, courtesy of Joshua Kaplan via the Gatestone Institute, who uses a lot of the information from there. Germany is now confiscating homes to use for Merkel's migrants. We all knew this day would come. We just didn't know how soon. Germany is now confiscating residential units to rent out to migrants living in the city of Hamburg. The Gatestone Institute reports. Authorities in Hamburg, the second largest city in Germany. I didn't know that, by the way. I thought maybe Frankfurt was second, but Berlin's first, I think. The second largest city in Germany have begun confiscating private dwellings to ease a housing shortage, one that has been acutely exacerbated by Chancellor Angela Merkel's decision to allow more than 2 million migrants into the country in recent years. City officials have been seizing commercial properties and converting them into migrant shelters since late 2015, when Merkel opened German borders to hundreds of thousands of migrants from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Now, however, the city is expropriating residential property units owned by private citizens. In an unprecedented move, Hamburg authorities recently confiscated 6 residential units in the Ham district near the city center. That's kind of ironic. I wonder if they're if the Muslims will protest that it's called Ham. Well, I guess they're not speaking English. In the Ham district near the city center, that's Hamm. The units, which are owned by a private landlord, are in need of repair and have been vacant since 2012. Of course, that's the landlord's prerogative, right? A trustee appointed by the city is now renovating the properties and will rent them, against the will of the owner, to tenants chosen by the city. What's the point of property rights? District spokeswoman Sorina Weiland said that all renovation costs will be billed to the owner of the properties. I guess the owner, in quotation marks. The expropriation is authorized by the Hamburg Housing Protection Act, Hamburg Wohnraumschutzgesetz, a 1982 law that was updated by the city's socialist government in May 2013 to enable the city to seize any residential property unit that has been vacant for more than 4 months. Of course, okay, so it's not like they didn't know about this. There is a risk associated with doing business in a socialist area, right? I mean, I can't feel that badly for them. The forced lease, the first of its kind in Germany, is said to be aimed at pressuring the owners of other vacant residences in the city to make them available for rent. Of the 700,000 rental units in Hamburg, somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000, less than 1%, that's not a lot, are believed to be vacant, according to an estimate by the Hamburg Senate. This is truly unprecedented. Will Merkel's madness ever come to an end? You know, I'm going to get into the comments. There are some good ones that I selected for you here. I want to pass on another thought. I was talking about, you know, the future of the German people versus the future of the Jewish people. And obviously, you know the context of 80, 75 years ago. 70 years ago, Israel didn't even exist. Not only is today a minor holiday of Lag BaOmer, which is just not a big deal, but Jews are going to celebrate this all around the world. I wonder if there's any holiday involved in being German that exudes as much real pride as this minor Jewish holiday. It's a very minor one, not even mentioned in the Bible. You know, are they even allowed to have German pride? I don't know. Do they, even if they were allowed, do they have any that they would want to mention it? Or is it just Oktoberfest where they don't even really mention anything about Germany? Obviously, it's a German tradition. The Muslims are protesting that, and they're canceling that somewhere. And not only that, on the secular calendar at least, it's Israel Independence Day. Israel was founded on May 14th, 1948. So there's an irony with that we're talking about this today too, though the reality is Jews do not celebrate Israel Independence Day today. They do it on the Jewish calendar, which was a couple weeks ago. So it's not really Israel Independence Day unless you do it on the secular calendar. Okay, let's get to the comments on this article, which is disturbing and so similar to so much of what we see in Europe. And I don't mean to be in your face about the Jewish versus non-Jewish European thing, but how can you not notice this? How can you not notice this if you're a Christian? How can you not notice this if you're a white non-Jew who, you know, is genuinely concerned about Europe as your ancestral homeland? Obviously, you know, I'm a little bit of a different position, but I can't help but notice these things and see the analogies in which civilization, if you call it that, seems healthier. So let's, with that in mind, look at the comments. And there are always good ones at the Gateway Pundit. And this article actually came up pretty recently, so there were only a few. There weren't that many up there. There will be hundreds by the afternoon today. But I got some of the best of the limited number that were already up because this is a very recent article. Comment: a reminder of how laughable it is when the left calls Merkel the true, quote, leader of the free world. I mean, I guess it's more the free world part than the leader, because she might as well be a leader of what is known as the free world, regardless of how free it is. This is very typical. It's not very different from what goes on in England, France, Holland, Sweden, and, well, could have been the U.S. if Hillary had taken over. There is a meme about 2010 German multiculturalism has failed, according to Margot, and then now she's bringing in hundreds of thousands of refugees. Another comment: wow, steal your property and then charge you for it. Ugh, and then charge you for it. Unfreaking believable. The history of Hitler has taught Merkel well. Another: this is not going to end well. And he continues: in Sweden, there is a law on the books that allows the government to confiscate summer homes. Summer homes are as Swedish as apple pie is American. If there is an unprecedented amount of refugees flooding the country, the government has the right to, quote, modify the home as they see fit to accommodate the largest amount of migrants, refugees. A meme quite simply says, Europe is lost, though I think you should make it clear that not all European countries are the same. Poland, where the people are probably a little tougher, maybe it's not necessarily even in the blood, but just because the history has been of Poland, and the people appreciate freedom and what they have a little bit better. Poland, the mentality is not like Germany, France, Holland, Sweden, where they've had it good. The Polish people are a little tougher. Millions more on the way. Soon Germans will be forced to house them in their own homes. I wouldn't rule that out. And the Germans will be just A-okay with that, because it would be racist to say no to such a draconian and totalitarian policy. They are cucked beyond belief. Another: if it was my property, it would be burned to the ground before I let the government confiscate it. Another, and someone responds to that: then you'd be in jail. Another: they can demolish the buildings and start new projects. Not a bad idea. Another: Angela Merkel will not be content until all of Germany looks just like the hellholes these so-called migrants come from. I like the use of so-called migrants. Another: I would burn them to the ground if the city pulled this. What are you Germans waiting for? Another: notice, politicians such as Merkel are exempt. Another: watching the self-destruction of Europe is entertaining. A response to that: we narrowly escaped that noose ourselves. Hillary would have been Merkel on steroids. Yeah, I agree. Response: the battle for our own country has not yet been won. Agree. Response: it's horrifying. Europe is blessed with a beauty, variety, history, and charm you can't find anywhere else in the world. It is being deliberately destroyed. I agree. And about the beauty and charm, but maybe that's part of what made the people so soft. You know, Israel, where Israel is now, look, it had the tradition, it was ancient, land of milk and honey, but the place was a swamp 80 years ago. The people have built something out of nothing, out of the desert, out of swamps. Look, maybe when you inherit something rather than build something on your own, it softens you and you don't appreciate it as much. Really. A response to that last comment: and the most horrifying part is that they do nothing to stop it. Response to that: well, the nationalists are severely outnumbered by Reds, so they can't do it by voting in a dissent leadership. That only leaves one option, and of course the use of Reds is often what really are Reds are Greens, or so-called Greens, but really just the so-called centrist parties. You know, Greens, you can say they're watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside. Yeah, I mean, but even the so-called conservative parties go along with this. Another comment: it's sad to see these people not standing up for their freedom, their culture, their safety, and ultimately their lives. Another: it is also sickening. What did the remaining World War II vets think about what the Europeans are doing with what their blood, sweat, and tears, and those of their brothers in arms who never came home, bought for them? I will point out that Europeans lost a lot more lives than Americans in World War II, and the Russians lost the most of all. This doesn't really apply to them, but, I mean, just think about how many French died in World War I, World War II. For that matter, Germans in World War I, where they weren't really the bad guys they were in World War II. World War I is a more interesting situation. But I'm not going to get into that right now. Just a little bit more few more comments that I think are worthwhile in this Joshua Kaplan piece at the Gateway Pundit. People in government don't believe in private property. We have that problem in the States too. We just see different tactics to get the property. Large fines, heavy tax burdens, crazy building codes. Here in Illinois, they are sitting on a so-called home improvement tax bill, where we will be taxed for improving our home. Something which happens anyway through property taxes. Another, when are the German people going to wake up and hang that stupid bitch? Another, this summer, Europe will be hot and bloody. Link to another article, and that article is Germany, Italy float EU mission to stop migrants in southern Libya. And here's a comment in that. The first months of this year have shown that our efforts up to this point have been insufficient. We must prevent hundreds of thousands of people who are in the hands of smugglers from risking their lives in Libya and the Mediterranean. The ministers wrote in a letter to the EU's executive. Most migrants are picked up at sea by the Italian Navy, joint EU-Navy mission Sophia, and private charity organizations before being brought to centers in Italy. All right, that's it for comments. And look, you know, the Europeans, the Western Europeans even care about having a civilization to pass on to their children, grandchildren, whatever, to their co-ethnics. I don't think so. And, you know, as a Jew, I just find it very hard to believe. I find it ironic, but very sad and very hard to believe. I don't get it. What do they think? I don't know. I can't relate. Thanks for watching.